Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Hi, everyone.
I am Lisa.
I'm Natanya.
And we are from the Monday Morning Cooking Club, and we are thrilled to bits, beyond actually, to have you all here with us again if you were here yesterday, and for the first time if you weren't, in our kitchen to make something super delicious, either for Jewish New Year or just for your Friday night.
Yeah. Or just for your weeknight meal if you really like brisket.
So we're very excited. We had over 500 people sign up for today's event, which just blows us away. I have to say, we feel so lucky and privileged that you've all chosen to spend this time with us, and we're happy to welcome you into the kitchen, and we hope we can continue doing these events and being part of this cooking family together that we feel we are creating and loving.
Yeah. We actually feel very connected to all of you. I know it's just through a screen and you're all over the place, all over the world actually, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because it's the week of Rosh Hashanah, but we really feel like we are with you and there's a community happening, and it's a really beautiful feeling.
And lots of people have been emailing us questions and direct message on Instagram and on Facebook. And sorry if I'm a bit slow answering them, but I'm trying to get back to all of you, and hopefully we'll answer all your brisket questions today.
Yes.
So
before we go any further, the oven, Lisa said, was 180, and people keep asking whether it should be fan forced or not. This oven here is never on fan forced. It is just 180 without fan force, but you have to know your own oven. So we're saying 180, not fan forced. So you regulate that to your own oven.
So so fan force, you usually reduce it by 15 to 20, but 180 to me is the temperature that I call cook everything on 180. Like most cakes will cook on 180, most roasts will end up on 180. To me, it's your usual high temperature.
It's not overly
high, just mediumly hot. Okay, so today we are cooking a beautiful roasted brisket, made especially. We sort of got together last year or the year before and decided we needed a new brisket. And we made it up for Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. And at Jewish New Year, we love to eat sweet foods to ensure that we have a sweet New Year, and usually honey. Honey's a big thing, as are carrots, as is sugar. It's anything we can put into food to make our New Year sweeter. So this brisket came about as a cross between my mum's brisket, which is in our first book, which is called Paula's Calf Brisket, which is a veal brisket on the bone, which she cooks smothered in fried onions for 3 or 4 hours. And it's a delicious, delicious thing. It's completely different to this, but the fried onion and the basting gave me the thought for this. And the other one is from Jackie Wasilewski in our second book called Flom and Simmer's Brisket, which is a brisket with potatoes.
Potatoes.
And prunes.
Yes, potatoes and prunes. Yes, and I used to make it until this one came along every Rosh Hashanah. It was just my standard. So then we decided to morph them together and create a new Monday Morning Cooking Club brisket.
So today we're using a beef brisket. I'm going to run through. Can you pass me that lovely big piece of meat? And I've had so many emails about brisket. And brisket is one of those things actually that people find difficult. I also find it difficult because sometimes if you get a really lean piece of brisket and you put it in the oven for your 3-hour cook, it's going to be dry and there's nothing you can do about it. Brisket is divided into 2 parts. There is the belly end or the navel end, which is much fattier, which is the bit that is really the succulent, juicy part that you really want.
See all the fat? That's actually what you want on it.
And the other part is the point end, which is more lean, which is going to get a different result. Most pieces of brisket that you randomly buy from a butcher are going to have both the pieces together, the lean bit and the fatty. And as long as you know that when you cook it, part of it is going to stay lean and part of it's not going to be succulent and juicy, but most of it will be. But you do need to talk to your butcher and make sure you get as much of the marbled, fattier bit than the lean for this dish.
Oh, so someone's just asked how big is this? Okay. This piece is actually exactly 2.2 kilos. So I asked for 2 and that's what I got. So that's basically roughly a 2 kilo piece of brisket.
Yeah. So I've cooked, I'm going to show you a few stages this morning. I've got a 1 kilo that I did yesterday, and I've got a 1.5 kilo that's in the oven at the moment. So we're going to show you, obviously we can't be with you for 4 hours, although I've got to say, I wouldn't mind. I'd be so happy. We could sit down, we could have lunch together while the brisket's cooking, but maybe another day. So today we're going to leave you, but I want to show you all the stages. So let's get started with the ingredients. So you need your brisket. If it's 1, 2, 3 kilos, all of them will be fine. You may need to cook it for a bit longer if it is really thick. The thickness is the thing that is going to determine the cooking time rather than the width.
And I just want to check, because people have made the mistake before. This is a fresh piece of brisket, not a pickled brisket.
Yep, that's right. It's fresh brisket.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, the recipe today can be 1 or 1.5. I would do everything the same. Think about how many people you're cooking for and whether you need more potatoes and carrots, but pretty much 1.5 kilos, same everything else. Okay, this is beef brisket, not veal. If you are using veal on the bone, you can follow the same method. You just start with the bones up, and then halfway through you're going to flip it over with the bones at the bottom. So that's the only difference. Everything else will be the same.
That's quite a hard piece of meat to buy, isn't it? To find.
You've got to pre-order,
the one on the bone.
Yeah.
It's not very common, and I think that's one of the reasons why we decided to create this one.
Yeah, because a lot of people couldn't find that veal breast on the bone. I know I've got to ask my butcher weeks and weeks ahead, and he gets them in. Anyway, so let's go through the ingredients. We've got our meat. We've got 4 onions for about a 1.5. 4 onions for 1 to 2 kilos. This is the recipe. 4 onions, and they need to be roughly chopped. So this is not a fine chop. This is a rough chop.
Start now.
If you want to start chopping your onions, if you haven't already, if you've done them, fine, that's also fine. But you don't need to for this recipe. I like to see the onion, and they're going to be cooked for so long that they can withstand being bigger pieces. So roughly chop your onions. Then we're going to have 4 carrots peeled. We're going to cut them. And 4 Desiree potatoes. Desiree are my favourite for this. They're a good all-round waxy potato. They're the pale pink skin, and they're lovely and yellow inside. And they work really well because they keep their shape with the slow cooking. So at the end of this brisket time, you'll have this almost, I call it a cholenti potato. It's like a potato that's cooked for so long that has so much flavour from everything in the pot in it. So we're going to cut that in a minute. So let's just start with the onions. Then you're also going to need some oil. Any oil you like is fine. I am using light olive oil today. You can use grapeseed, canola, vegetable, even extra virgin olive oil. It just, whatever you prefer. We're going to need 1/3 of a cup of that. 1.5 tablespoons of brown sugar for 4 carrots. If you increase your carrots, just adjust the brown sugar accordingly. 1 cinnamon stick. If you're cooking a 4 kilo brisket, you would probably start increasing.
Yes, 1 cinnamon stick's not going to do.
Salt and pepper. Honey, we're going to need 1/4 cup of honey for a 1 to 2 kilo brisket. Some orange peel and 1/3 cup, and I've done a heaped 1/3 cup of prunes.
Now, someone's asked whether they could add some other vegetables to this dish. I suppose you can add whatever you want, but just be careful with something they've asked about zucchini. Zucchini is quite soft and breaks down very quickly, and you're cooking this for 3 to 4 hours. There will be nothing left of the zucchini. So no, I don't suggest something like that. I would a much heartier vegetable would be a better idea. Yeah. So zucchini probably wouldn't be my first choice for it, but sweet potato would work well. Pumpkin would probably just dissolve though. After an hour, you'd probably have pumpkin puree at the bottom of the thing. But actually, it would sweeten the dish even more. So it's not a bad idea.
What you'll see when this is done is that everything is still in its pieces. Nothing's, except for the prunes, which sort of start to melt in, and the onions. You see the potato pieces and the carrot, which is really lovely. Yeah. All right. So parsnip. Yeah, parsnip would work. Any of the root vegetables would work really well. Celeriac would actually work well as well. Any of the vegetables that withstand long roasting would be great. Yeah. Okay. Is it better to make it ahead? I think with a meat dish like this,
you would never make this on the day. This dish
never.
If you can.
Yeah.
A night in the fridge really allows the flavors to enhance, and then you bring it out from the fridge. We'll talk about that at the end. Yeah. But definitely a day or even 2 days ahead is great.
But I have to say that last night I made the one yesterday that I'm going to show you later, and I could have just eaten it straight away. It was just so juicy and succulent, and the smell, and I stuck my fork in. It was just like delicious and tender, and I nearly didn't wait, and it would have been good. All right, so let's start by frying the onions. We'll talk about, people are asking about the orange peel. We'll come back to that. We'll talk about the prunes in a minute. Let's start frying the onions. You need 1/3 cup of oil. Can I just say that if you're roasting, we're going to cook it in this. Can you show them that? I'll just lift that up. We're going to cook it in a roasting.
This is the roasting pan that the whole thing is going to go in the oven in.
So mine that I've got is stove, what's it called? It's heat proof in the sense that I can cook on a stove, on a flame. So I would do, if you've got one that is flame proof, you should cook your onions directly in that pan. You don't need to waste another pan on your stove top. But because Natty's going to take hers home in the car, I'm not going to give her a hot thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what brand roasting dish do we recommend?
You know what?
Any heavy duty non-stick. Yeah. My favourite, I have to say, is Bessemer. And
they don't make it anymore.
Don't know?
No, Bessemer's finished. Finished. Sorry. Scan Pan does a beautiful roasting dish.
Also, Swiss Diamond do a very good one as well. Okay. So I'm going to put 1/3 cup of oil into the pan. We're going to turn it on. You could do
a Le Creuset roasting dish would also be beautiful.
Someone asked me this morning if you could do it on an oven tray. You actually need the sides because we're going to put some liquid in.
Yeah, so, I don't think unless you've got a very deep one.
1/3 cup of oil into the pan, and then the onions are going in. So remember, if your pan is flame proof, you can do it on the cooktop in your pan. Let's put these in. And we're going to fry them on a high heat till they just start to brown at the edges. They don't need to be fully brown. They don't need to be not crunchy. They just need to start to cook, actually. Here. So it's on a high heat. So everyone put your onions on. And so Jaffa said, sorry, what's wrong with Bessemer? Nothing. Apparently they've stopped making.
No, yeah, Bessemer's great, but I was told that they're not making anything anymore. So hang on to the Bessemer that you've got, and I think that's the end of it. Okay.
So while your onions are on, and I'll watch the onions, you need to cut up your potatoes and your carrots. Now, carrot-wise, the recipe says to slice, what does it say? It says slice thickly. I do mine in big chunks because I just do. Natty's going to slice hers thickly, but make sure they're quite thick because they're going to cook for a long time. And if they're too thin, they'll just go to nothing.
So I'm doing nice big chunks.
Okay, so
and they're quite big carrots.
Le Creuset would be fine as well, with the lid, because we are going to cover it for the first 2 hours. But you need a really big one, I think, to fit the big brisket. Okay. So so someone's got a 3 kilo very thick brisket. That's going to need 4 hours, I would say, without a doubt. But we're going to check it after 3. I'll talk about that when we check mine after 2. And you may need to then cook it for a bit longer. Okay. I don't have any more carrots.
No more carrots.
Okay, so these are cooking, and they're going to take no more than 10 minutes to cook. And then we're going to toss the carrots in a bowl with, you can use that bowl, with our brown sugar. Okay, someone said, can you use a stainless steel oven dish, like a roasting pan? Absolutely. Any roasting pan with size.
A deep enough side to hold some liquid in it as well.
So these are the carrots, and I'm sprinkling over the brown sugar. And we're going to toss it with it so they're all coated in the brown sugar. And that's our carrots. I would do it with my fingers. It's just easy to toss. Just make sure everyone can see what you're doing, Natty.
Sorry, just tossing.
Okay, so onions are frying off. It's a lot of onion. It is a lot of onion, which is what makes this dish really good. Okay, so you've got your 4 onions in there and 1/3 cup of oil.
Carrots are ready to go, and I'm going to, well, we've got time now. I've peeled my potatoes, and now I'm going to chop them. Yeah, the recipe says quartered. I actually cut mine into 8. These are big potatoes.
So I did, one across, and then,
Yeah.
So this is the size that I did for mine, but it's entirely up to you. You could just do 1/4 of a potato, it would be fine. Okay. Yeah, someone said that they had pre-cut carrot and sugar and it goes to liquid. Yeah, same thing happened to me this morning, actually. Yeah, just chuck it all in with just some carrot juice. It's perfect. Okay, so the onions are sizzling. Can you use a tin foil dish with the same results? Absolutely. Just please be careful with those. Some of you might recall our cheesecake fiasco where we baked a cheesecake in one of those foil trays, and I was videoing Natty bringing it out of the oven, and she brought it out and the whole thing collapsed onto itself and fell on the floor, and luckily didn't burn her feet, but could have, but the whole cheesecake was on the floor. So the point is, if you use a foil tray, put it on a tray. Put it on a rack or an oven tray when you carry it, because they don't always hold themselves.
They're not strong.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fine.
Potatoes already.
Would it be nice with no onion?
No.
Someone in the family doesn't eat onion.
I think for this particular dish,
this is the essence of the dish.
It really adds a lot of flavour, a lot of sweetness, a lot of texture. Like you need it for the sauce part of it. Yeah.
I do think so too.
I think pick another brisket.
Okay, how much brown sugar? 1.5 tablespoons of brown sugar for 4 carrots. So if you do more carrots, just adjust it, or less carrots. Okay. So that's still frying. Everything is cut. So you should have your carrots chopped and ready, your potatoes chopped and ready, your onions are frying. We've got our 1 cinnamon stick that we're going to use, and we're going to peel 2 bits of what is this called? Orange. I've washed it and scrubbed it very well, and I'm just going to use a potato peeler and try to get a piece without too much of the white pith. Because that adds bitterness. So I've got a lovely piece that I've done. Happy with that?
Yes.
Very good job.
Where is that?
Just that. So we're just going to put that there for now. We're going to do 3 for Natty because she loves her orange. Okay, 3 pieces of orange peel.
Thank you. And what about seasoning? Do we not need to season the meat?
We do. Okay, so we are going to season the onion first.
The onion. Okay.
And I think seasoning the onion is a really good idea because while it's cooking, or in a minute we'll season it, and every piece of onion will then have flavour, which then goes on all over the meat. We're also going to season the whole dish before it goes in the oven.
Okay.
But we've got measurements of 1 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper that are going to go into there. And they're just starters, and I think you're going to need more seasoning than that. The elements of this dish, which comes from my mum's brisket, that I think make it super delicious, are oil, onion, and salt. I think those 3 elements are really important in this. Okay. Someone said, is the dish very sweet? Could you leave the honey out? It's not super sweet, but it is sweet because it's a New Year's brisket. But of course, leave the honey out, leave the brown sugar out.
You've also got the prunes in it at the end, which also add more sweetness as well.
So you could, absolutely. Probably the first thing I'd leave out would be the brown sugar and the carrots, and leave the honey.
Okay.
Or you could do it the other way around.
You could also just
so that's a teaspoon of salt.
Play with your seasoning. Like if you balance out the saltiness and the sweetness, then it's not going to be overly sweet. It'll have a really good balance. So
okay, so we've got a teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. What I do, I know we all love freshly ground pepper, but every few weeks I do buy a thing of peppercorns and I grind them in the spice machine, in the spice grinder, or it's actually a coffee grinder. And I just put them in a jar, and then I've got, for recipes that call for a teaspoon of ground pepper, I've got this. So that's what I do, which works very well. All right. Can we use frozen onions? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just remember though, when you do fry them off, they do release some water, and you need to just deal with that. But yeah, fine. Okay. Let's talk about the dried fruit. People have asked, can we use dates instead of prunes? Can we use dried apricots instead of prunes? Sure.
Yeah.
Use whatever you like. I think the prunes to me are the most subtle of all the dried fruit. They really just melt in. You're not going to get a really pruny flavour. They just add a lovely tart sweetness to it that I think goes really well.
I think dates would be even sweeter, but I think they would work.
Yeah, fine. I think so. And dried apricots,
I don't know if you'll get enough sweetness.
It's worth trying. I think it's worth trying, but I think the dried fruit does add something lovely to it. Yeah. Okay, so someone said, is a large Corningware with a lid okay to use, or is foil better? I think a lid's fine. I think a lid's fine. And we're using foil in this because there's no lid for these roasting pans.
And also we're doing a layer of baking paper first, so to help keep all the moisture in. So you'll have the baking paper and then the alfoil or your lid.
So I'm pretty happy with those onions. Again, we're not doing onions to the level of egg and onion onions or tomato sauce onions. These are a different thing because they're going to cook for so long that this is actually perfect, and they will still brown and be absolutely fantastic. I'm going to show you what they look like. Okay, they're brown around the edges. They're just starting to soften. If I eat one, which I will to show you, yum. They still have a slight crunch, which is fine for this recipe. When you're making a tomato sauce, though, we don't want any crunch because as soon as the acid from the tomatoes hits the onions, they're going to not get softer again. So this recipe is fine. Okay, this recipe is not from a book. This is from our website. Yeah. Right, so I'm going to turn the onions off for a minute and we're going to start layering all the ingredients in the pan. Okay. Yes, so the recipe says 1/4 teaspoon of pepper plus extra because we're going to pepper and salt the whole dish before it goes in the oven. So we've got a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper in there. I like things a little saltier, so I'd probably add a little bit more salt now. Let's do that.
I love my salty food.
Okay, so I've just salted a bit more for Natty because this is her Friday night dinner. And now we're going to layer and show you how we're going to do this together. Okay, slow cooker. We've had so many questions about the slow cooker. I have no experience at all with a slow cooker, so I can't help you. I'm sorry.
I use a slow cooker in winter, and I think for this dish, you could definitely start it in the slow cooker. If you've got one of those slow cookers where it comes out, because then you can fry your onions and layer it up and put it in for your first, is it 2 hours?
Yeah.
You could do that, and you could actually turn it down and do it slow and low, like for 4 hours on a lower heat. But you want it in the oven afterwards to crisper.
And to glaze. You need a glaze. And it goes really brown and really glazed. And the vegetables get this incredible texture that I think you would lose in a slow cooker alone.
You won't get that.
So that's the thing you'll have to work out. And sorry, we can't, I just don't know the answer to that. Right, I'm just going to put this board down so we can put your dish on and we don't burn ourselves. The flame is off. And we're going to put, so I want you, everybody, is that all right there?
Yeah.
We're going to start with our roasting pan, nothing's in it, and you're going to put half the onions in the bottom of the pan. Do you want to do it and I'll get the next? Sure. So half of your onions, give or take, it's not, you know, it doesn't have to be precise, it's going to go in the bottom.
With all the oil that goes with it.
Yeah, you need all this oil. It's really delicious. Okay. So Caroline said, in a slow cooker, more liquid is produced. So I wonder if in a slow cooker, maybe you don't add water at the beginning, but slow cooker people, you know, let us know how you go and then we can report it, put it on the website with the recipe. That would be great. And spread it out a little bit on the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to put my beautiful piece of brisket. I want to just show you one thing about brisket. You can see, it feels so yummy. It's got like, what's it called? Lost my word. You know, the grain. Thank you. You can see it's got very, very strong grains. The meat has lines across it. When we cut the brisket, it's super important to cut it across the grain so that you get little short bits that are cut rather than long stringy bits if you cut it that way. And that's probably the most challenging thing of all of having a brisket dish, especially a brisket that's with both parts, because the grain can go in opposite direction.
You can see on this,
so that one goes there,
long ways, and then
that one's going there.
Way.
So that's something that you've got to deal with, and that's the challenge of brisket, I'm afraid.
And you actually see the grains better uncooked than once it's cooked. But you can tell when you're slicing it, because when you're slicing it with the grain, so it sort of gets a rough texture on it. And then we'll show you when we cut it. We'll show you.
So someone just asked, this is a brisket. This is a beef brisket, and it's a 2 kilo piece, which is huge. it will shrink as it cooks, okay? And
so we've got one layer of onions underneath, half our onions. We've put the brisket on top.
Now we're going to top it with the rest of the onions. Okay. And so it's like a brisket onion sandwich in the sense that the brisket is in the middle. Okay. All right.
And all that beautiful onion oil you want.
Okay, so someone said, should she trim the fat? No, I wouldn't trim the fat, but put the fat on the top if you can. So if you've got one fattier side, put that fat on the top to help it to crisp up and melt off as it cooks. Again, that's what goes on the top.
I'm just getting as much of the oil as I can.
And just, we're going to spread it out a little bit on the top. Chuck that in the sink.
Take that.
Okay, and just spread your onions on top of the brisket like this. Okay, that's step one. Onions and brisket in the roasting pan. Next, we're just going to put the carrots around and the potatoes around the side. This meat is huge, so I'm just going to do that, just so there's some room for the carrots and the potatoes. It will shrink.
Yeah. Oh, and all that beautiful
carrot
brown
juice,
sugar juice.
Yeah.
Yes, that's lovely.
Okay.
That's exactly what you want.
Okay. Okay, no, we haven't actually seasoned the meat itself because the juice, what?
The sounds.
That's right. I hate metal on metal, but that's okay. No, we have not seasoned the meat because we've seasoned the onions really well and they're now soaking into the meat, which is seasoning the meat. And we're going to season the whole dish. Thanks, Maddie. Okay. And the potatoes go in as well, all around.
Got to find room for it all.
And then we're going to put a 1/4 cup of honey over the whole thing. Now, I've kept my 1/3 of a cup measure from my oil, and this is what I'm going to measure my honey in. I know that 1/4 cup is just like a tablespoon off a 1/3 cup, so I'm going to use this because it's oily and the honey won't stick. Okay, any more questions here? No, all good. Can you leave out the orange rind? Yes, of course, leave it out. She will never leave out orange from any recipe because she loves it.
Why would you want to leave out the orange rind? It's not going to taste of orange. It just adds to the flavour, the overall flavour.
It really adds a little something that you can't quite put your finger on.
Orange rind in?
Yeah, I'm just making a bit of room here.
Fine.
I think this is a little bit, I would probably use a bigger thing. Slightly bigger pan for this, but that's okay.
Cinnamon stick? Throw that in somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
Lay it in.
And that's everything, and we just need to put the honey and then do another season. So I'm just going to do a 1/4 cup of honey. Candy, why don't we sear the meat? There's just no need. You'll see when it's cooked how it looks as if it's been seared. It is glazed and has a crusty outside. Yeah. It just doesn't need it, and it's just it would be a waste of time to do it. And this is much easier. And we're just going to drizzle this lovely honey all over the meat and the veggies, and see it just comes out fairly nicely because the oil was in there. Okay.
Let's season again.
And let's season again. And you salt on old pepper. Okay, that's it.
Just remember to just give a little season to the vegetables as well because they haven't had.
Okay, it's very, very good seasoning. So it looks very full, but it is going to shrink. Now, then we're going to put in water. And the recipe says to put water up to halfway in the meat, at the level of the meat. So just pour in a little bit, just pour it in on the outside. If you pour it in on top of the meat, it'll push the onions off. So we're just going to pour it up and just look at your meat, and it should be no more than halfway. Okay, that's perfect. All right. Okay, you'll do the rest when you get home. I don't want you to...
I don't want to overflow it.
And then you need some baking paper. Do that. I don't know why. It just makes it easier.
It makes it so much easier to deal with.
Okay, someone said, can you use golden syrup instead of honey? Absolutely. Can you use broth?
Yes, you can.
You can, but there's just no need. There is so much flavour in this dish with just water. You just don't need it. Think about all the flavours you've got going on here. You don't need the broth. Okay. Okay, so we add the prunes at the next stage. Okay, so now we're just going to put this on top. And I just shove it down the sides a bit. Like that. I just know to finish it.
I've got a packet.
Okay, all right. She's driving at home in the car, so she's worried if she puts too much water in, that it's going to
spill. But you know what? I'll be careful.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Yeah, it's a very full pan. My pan was not as full, so just judge for yourself how you're going. Okay. No, we have not added the prunes yet. I've just got everything except for the prunes. Cinnamon, orange, honey, salt and pepper, carrots, potatoes, meat and onions. And then I'm going to do 2 foils with the shiny side up, because I imagine, and I don't know if it's true or if I even made this up, that it reflects the heat and keeps, I don't know. I did. Maybe I saw it somewhere, but you should have the shiny side up. And I want it to be nice and tight, okay, because I don't want the liquid to evaporate. I want it to be,
I would do one more
then
layer.
you could do one more across.
Yeah.
I'll do one more for you.
Yeah. And then I go around pinching the sides, so it's really well filled and tight.
Now, if you have a baking dish with a lid, I would put the maybe 2 layers of baking paper inside and then the lid. Yeah. And I think that'll be perfect. All right, that can go into your car. I'm just going to see it. All right, just let's move it out the way and we'll get to the next stage. So everyone put that in your oven now, 180 degrees. Yeah, Eve said, "I'll be careful." Famous last words with you with that in the car. I know. When it's all over her back seat, we know. We hear you. Okay, so yes, shiny side does reflect the heat, which means that it keeps. I don't know what it does. So is it better to have the shiny side up? I think so, but you know, it could be
to keep the water in.
All right, now I'm just looking at my watch because I've had this in the oven since 9:30. I did exactly this morning, and I want to show you. Oh, sorry, it's going in the oven for 2 hours. You don't need to look at it. If you're nervous, look at it after an hour.
No, don't, because you don't want to. You don't want all the steam to escape from it.
Yeah.
Just leave it for 2 hours.
Yeah. So Bella says shiny side down to the meat. We can have a debate about that. I must see what the story is with that.
Look it up and
it's 180 Celsius lowest. Okay. Okay, so baking paper is parchment paper. Yeah, it's the same thing. And what it does is it just helps keep the moisture in around the meat. Just helps keep it succulent, which is what we want. All right. So,
beautiful. Yesterday we had a house that smelled all of honey cake, and today it's all brisket.
Just give me 1 second. I just need to.
And I'm just giving it. I'm really sealing it as well as possible. You just don't want any steam escaping at all. That'll help keep it nice and moist.
Right, that is the one that we're going to. This is the one.
Oh, here's slightly wider.
So this went in at 9:30 this morning. It's been in for 2 hours. I've not touched it, and I'm just going to let the steam. Remember, when you open this up, it's hot and there's a lot of steam. Okay.
Yeah, so always open it up away from your face.
And you can see the meat. I mean, you didn't know what it was like before, but it's completely gone, which is what is fine. What you want it to do. And the vegetables, can you see? Cooked, but don't look delicious yet. There's nothing. This dish does not look delicious yet, but I want to tell you, it is moments away from looking delicious. I'm going to add the prunes now.
An hour away from looking delicious.
Perhaps I'm going to add the prunes now, and I think it's the Jewish mother in me, but I'm nervous that someone's going to eat a prune and there's going to be a pit in it in a dish where you don't expect it. So I want to cut them in half. But yesterday I was I don't know why I decided to break them in half, because I wanted to have them more mushy, not mushy, but help them to break down into the sauce. So I just tore them all in half, feeling for the pip along the way, because I don't want any pips in this dish, okay? So my advice to you, because you can't trust them, is to, but feel them as you go, Natty, because I want to make sure,
but I'll get it if I cut it.
I know, but sometimes the pips are small and I'm just nervous to break someone's teeth. Okay. All right, so Hillary was told by a good chef that the other way around for foil, so you put the shiny side inside. Yeah, I just wonder about that. We have to look into it. I've done it both ways and I don't know that it's actually made any difference. We'd have to do a test. So we're putting the prunes in now, cutting them in half to make sure there are no pips in them. Can you use dates? Absolutely. We talked about the dried fruit before. Use whatever you like. it will just add some,
or don't,
a different flavour.
You actually could leave it out if you really had a problem with that.
Okay, so we've put in the dried fruit. All right, so yeah, if your dish has a lid, just do baking paper and no foil. So you can see my piece looks very,
what?
It's not an attractive time yet because it's not golden, and it's this hour now or more if you've got a bigger piece.
I want you to see, this is a really important thing, because for the next hour that it cooks uncovered, Lisa's going to be basting it regularly. And this is what basting is, what she's doing now. And it's really important. It's a really important step to it. Like you've had 2 hours where you didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
For this hour, the basting is what keeps that piece of meat really juicy, and at the same time goes beautifully dark and crispy on the outside.
So this is
you can't skip this.
Somebody's just asked for, this is a 1.5 kilo piece of brisket, and you can see it looks okay. I wouldn't be excited to eat it yet. It doesn't look delicious yet, but it will. You have to trust me on that. So I'm going to make sure I know the time is 11:40. I'm going to put it in the oven, and I'm going to, no, I'll remember. I won't remember.
I'll put a timer. Every 15 minutes.
And it's going to need another hour.
So I'll put it on for an hour, and then every 15 minutes.
So I'm going to put that in. I'm going to baste it every 15 minutes or so and see how it goes. At the end of the hour, I'm going to stick a fork in and I'm going to see how it feels, because I want it to be sort of very soft when I put my fork in. I don't want any resistance. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. So that's going to go in the oven. And this is the one I made yesterday.
Oh, see? That's the colour you want. And look at those potatoes.
So
beautiful.
This is exactly how I want it to look. You can see the meat is really brown. There's just no need to brown it at all. It is absolutely, I don't know if it looks as good on the camera as it does here. The potatoes are cholent potatoes. They are still holding their shape, but they are full of all the juices and flavours from the cooking. The prunes you can see, but a lot of them have just melted into it, and the onions have just, they've just dissolved into everything else. And it's really, really...
It's actually amazing in 3 hours.
Yeah. So this is a 3 hour, and this was a 1 kilo piece, so it's quite small, and that's going to feed, you know, people don't eat that much meat actually. It's probably going to feed about 4 to 6 people. So just have a look at that. Okay.
I think you get about, what did you get, about 15 slices out of that? 20?
Depends how thick you count. You know, I'm a thick slicer.
I'm a thick slicer.
And I want to show you how we're going to slice that in 1 second, just to answer this. Okay, so I reheated that. I put my baking paper and my foil that I cooked, I just pressed it on top. I didn't seal it again, and I put it in the oven for half an hour at 180, and this is what happens. I would actually, what I would do just before I serve it, I would probably do 10 minutes without anything on it, because I just want it to crisp up a bit on the top. And there is very little liquid left, probably 2 tablespoons, you know, a few tablespoons of liquid in the bottom, not very much at all. Sorry, one more thing. If you find it's drying out when you check it or you're basting it, just add some more water. And you can do that during the basting. If it's dry, which you don't want, add some more water.
But if I would add hot water, not cold water to that, you would have to add water so that you retain the same temperature. So make sure it's boiling water.
I've got so much foil and stuff here, I can't see my
I just wanted to discuss serving it if you're making it a day ahead. So if you've made it, like Lisa made this one yesterday, she let it cool, she covered it and put it in the fridge. Then she brought it out today to reheat it. If you're bringing it out the next day to reheat it for your Rosh Hashanah dinner or lunch, we at home, before we reheat it, we always slice it while it's cold. It is so much easier to handle. So I would have, like she's doing now, but it would have been cold, I would have taken the piece of meat out, put it on a board, left all my veggies there, sliced it up to thick or thin, however you like it, put it sort of back together, back in where you took it out from, and then reheated it. And then you can just serve it straight from your pan at the table.
I'm trying to see if I can see. Is that better to see the brisket or not? Does that help you see the brisket like that? I'm just trying to show you. So you need to sort of work out which way the grain is going to start, but you can see it's going there, and here I think it's going this way. But this is, when I put my fork in, like have a feel, stick your fork in and see what I mean by, you know, it's just like soft and squishy, which is what you want. Yeah. Okay. Oh, the light's better. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Norma. Okay. So, all right, let's try and cut it and see. Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
That's the wrong way.
No, it's the right way. See how it's cut across? So you can see this is an absolutely beautiful, I mean, this is the fattiest part of the brisket, which I really do like. But I want to show you how succulent and delicious that is.
It's really soft.
Really, really soft. Yeah. And so you need to cut it along. Sometimes you need to take a piece off and cut it. So you can see the lines. So that's it.
Beautiful.
So we can slice it up, and then
the vegetables look incredible.
Okay, so you can see perfectly there.
Yeah. See how it's smooth?
It's across the grain. And you will, this is all well marbled, this whole piece that he's given me this time. If you find that you do have a lean piece in there, that's fine. Also cut it a bit thinner and make sure it is across the grain, and it'll be fine with the sauce and the juice from the vegetables. It's amazing. The potatoes I want to show you are...
Someone's asked about kosher meat. Kosher meat is probably saltier than non-kosher meat. So just go easy with your seasoning.
Yeah. My carrots are still in pieces, and the prunes and onions here make the most beautiful sauce, which I do want to show you.
Yeah, looks incredible.
It really, really looks beautiful. So what you could do, as Natty said, if you want, is let it cool, slice it, then I'd cover it completely with the vegetables and the sauce to reheat. You can see everything is just really, not very useful, is it? Succulent and delicious and cooked beautifully together. So I think we need to have a taste. Are you happy to have a little taste?
A little taste, yeah. Love to. It's so soft.
It's so soft, actually.
Soft it is.
Unbelievable. Unbelievably delicious. And that's the meat on its own. We've got nothing else with it here. And you can taste hints of everything.
Beautiful.
It's not too salty. Beautiful. It's not even sweet. It's actually the sauce and the vegetables that are sweet. Okay, so what temperature do we reheat? I reheated this at 180 with the covers on loosely, not tightly, for about half an hour. But just watch it. Make sure it doesn't dry out after all that cooking. Okay, if you cook it today, which hopefully you're all cooking it today, let it cool completely this afternoon after you've finished cooking it. And then wrap it, just put some Glad wrap or some foil on it and put it in the back of the fridge and leave it there till Friday or whenever to reheat it. It's perfect in the fridge for 2 days without a problem, or more, or 3 days.
It'll just taste better.
If you do want to sort out the slicing beforehand, then by all means let it cool, slice it. You can see the grain really easily, and put it back in there with the vegetables.
I would let it cool, wait overnight and slice it just before I'm ready to reheat it.
Okay, fine. I don't think it makes any difference, but yeah. What about freezing? You know what?
People do freeze cooked brisket.
I don't think the vegetables will work well.
No,
I think the vegetables... If you wanted
to slice your meat and wrap it in our foil, you would freeze it. I don't think there would be any problem with that. It's not something I do. Yeah. Ever, but it's up to you.
Melinda says she loves that we both do things differently. We do.
Sorry,
it's annoying for all of you sometimes.
We have a lot of respect for each other's ways.
We do, absolutely. So that is the beautiful brisket. I hope that you all have delicious, sweet, soft, succulent brisket like that. And just remember, it is such a good recipe. Do it ahead. If you're doing it today, then you'll be all set for the weekend, which is just fantastic. Okay, any more questions? Can you reheat a few times? You know what? They say that you're not supposed to reheat meat a few times. So the OH&S says, no, you can't. You can only reheat meat once, but we all do it.
Yeah.
Someone asked if I had it in the fridge overnight. Actually, it was a very cool night last night, so I didn't. My mum, interestingly, growing up, I remember on Friday night, she'd put the roast chicken from dinner into the pantry, not the fridge, and it was fine till the next day. And now we're all so worried about it. So OH&S says, yes, you must store it in the fridge, but if you've got a really cold kitchen, then for one night, I think it's fine if you're reheating it the next night.
I just want you to know that leftover sliced brisket makes the best challah sandwiches. So there's your lunch the next day. If there's any leftover. Okay,
question. Did we answer everybody's question about reheating, about storing?
I think we covered it really well.
I've sliced it very thickly. You're probably going to slice it thinner.
Yeah.
It's much easier to cut when it's cold than when it's hot.
That's right. It doesn't fall apart.
That's the other thing to note. And you can see the grain very well. There was something else. Oh, someone said, what are we going to serve this with? We were discussing it this morning, and we both agree that it's got all that veggies there. You don't need anything else. You just need something light. So we would go a green salad and a cabbage salad. That's what we thought.
Idea.
Like just two, okay, Marianne says, can we reheat it in the microwave? You know what? Yes, probably. For 1 or 2 serves, you probably could. There's something about the oven that gives it that glazed and stickiness.
And someone asked if you could cook it for longer. You can definitely cook it for longer. I would just turn the temperature down. I think you wouldn't want to cook it for too long on 180. And if you're going to cook it for longer, I'd do the first part, the long part. So instead of 180 for 2 hours covered, we were talking about 140, 150 for double it for 5 hours. And then you're cooking it slowly and for a long time at a low heat rather than the shorter burst. Depends how much time you've got.
So remember, after 3 hours, you will have checked your meat. Mine was ready, my 1 kilo and my, we'll see about my 1.5 kilo. If it's a 3 or 4 kilo piece, it's probably not going to be ready after 3 hours, and you probably will need to do another hour. Remember, add water to baste if it dries out. If you think it's overcooking, turn the oven down and cover it again. Like, just be aware that bigger pieces might need a bit more nurturing through the last hour. I think that's it. And remember, not every piece of brisket is the same. So it's hard to give a hard and fast rule for how long to cook yours for. But you can see our 1 kilo, our 1.5 kilo, and our 2 kilo. Same stuff, same method, same quantities of everything else. Just make sure you stick your fork in, and you want to feel that squishy softness when you put it in. It's really important. How many people does 2 kilos serve? Depends which family.
Yes, exactly.
I think you need to allow, if you've got lots of other food, I would say 150 to 200 grams maximum per person. 150 grams of raw meat per person. People don't need as much as you think, actually.
And also, are you having soup, and then are you having fish and liver and egg, and then you're serving the meat, then you need less. It really depends on so many things. You know your families.
And do you cover the brisket for the last hour? So we did 2 hours covered, and then 1 hour, which is this hour now, which is uncovered, and
time to baste.
We're basting. I'll do a quick baste before we go, and basting every hour after that. Can you just put that over there for 1 sec? I'll just show you a basting. So this has been in there for 15 minutes. It's already looking better than it was before. And I'm going to baste it. I use a ladle or a big spoon, and there's still quite a bit of juice in here. The basting is really, really important. Okay, and I've got a lovely layer of fried onions on top, which are like set on top of the brisket, which is just lovely. And if I get a fork, can you pass me a fork, please? I want to just show you. So this is a leaner piece than the one I had. No, it's not cooked yet. The bottom is cooked. See, it's in 2 parts. The bottom is really nice, and the top needs a little bit more. So I'm just going to keep going.
And you want it much darker than that anyway. Still way too light.
Okay, so that's it. I'm going to keep basting that, and that's my dinner for Friday night. And I think that we are done. Yes, the juice will disappear as you cook it, and you'll end up, this is the one that is finished, with very little, not even a quarter of a cup in the bottom of the pan. It's really very little, and it's just these gorgeous roasted,
onion,
flavor-packed, soft vegetables that you just can't get this flavor. This is why you don't need broth in there, because there is just so much flavor in those vegetables with the onions and the prunes. So thank you all. We've really enjoyed having you. I hope you've enjoyed the cook along today, and we'd love to see your pictures of your brisket, hear how it was.
Yep.
Hope you're all happy with your brisket recipe today.
Want to wish everyone a Shana Tova and well over the fast for Yom Kippur. I hope you are all healthy and okay for those in isolation, and we wish everyone a very, very sweet new year.
I agree with that, and same from me. But just Robin asked a question about, do we flip the veal brisket? If you're cooking veal on the bone, you need to flip it halfway through. You start with the bones up and then you flip it halfway through to bones down. This doesn't need flipping. It just cooks in one piece without being turned over. I just want to say one more thing. On Thursday, which is tomorrow, I think, I'm going to be doing an Instagram live at some point in the day. I'm going to be making my Auntie Myrna's carrot simmus, which is a beautiful dish with carrots and butter and lemon and honey. And I'm going to make it during the day, and it's in a few stages, and I'm going to be doing it on Instagram Live, and I'll let you know on Instagram when that will happen. And what else is going on? I think that's it. And then we're all getting ready for our own weekend of Rosh Hashanah festivities. Yes. And all the honey cake we're going to eat and all the brisket we're going to enjoy, and we can't wait. So lots of love to all of you. Melbourne people, please hang in there. Hopefully it'll be over soon and you'll be free. And everyone else, Shana Tova, and we'll see you at the next session. Hope you've had fun. See you all. Bye for now. See ya.